Sorry, everyone. I have to go over there and turn the sound off so we don't get double sound, which is distressing. Can you all type hello, please, or yes, or Tina, I can hear you, or something like that, and then I will continue. And we have a little time delay, so yes, awesome, beautiful. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this little extra session. I had a really bad headache the Sunday that we were trying to do our last live stream, and it was actually interfering with the transmission. So the bosses called it off, and here we are to make up that time. So I'm going to forego Jesus's commentary first thing, and we're going to get straight to the questions as this is a makeup session. I do want to first once again remind you that we have, I think, 7 spaces left on the Crete retreat, and we are, of course, now taking applications for the Salt Spring retreat. And just to tempt you, we are working on 2 more retreats, one for the end of November, one for December, but they are secret until we confirm this. So just know that there's some really lovely locations being explored. So, question for live streaming. And we'll ask Jesus this one. How can we distinguish between desire for specialness, as spoken about in A Course in Miracles, and one's unique original self-expression? For example, if someone wishes or desires to be in a field or vocation in performing arts, which may potentially lead one to lead a public life, is it ego-driven desire to get acclaim, or spirit's self-expression extension in the world? It's a good question. Okay, let's see what Jesus has to say about that. You are blessed beings indeed. I am that one that you know as Jesus, and we thank you for joining us again today. We are never upset to have an extra little session with all of you, and as we feel, you are never upset either. We are thoroughly enjoying doing the lessons of A Course in Miracles and inspiring people around the world to pay attention to what they are thinking and feeling, and therefore creating. So when you want something, it is different than being inspired to do something. This is the way that you will know whether it is an ego-driven thing or not. I want a nice car. If you go beneath that, I want, why do you want a nice car? Well, I want a nice car because it will make me feel good. Why will it make you feel good? Well, because the commercial told me so. That's one way of knowing that the ego is involved. I want to be a singer. Why do you want to be a singer? I don't know. I've always wanted to be a singer. When did you start singing? Oh, I don't know. When I was a baby, I used to sing in front of my mum and dad when I was 3 or 4. It's just never gone away. That is probably not an ego-driven thing, other than to say that most of what you want in this world is an ego-driven thing, because this is the ego's playground. So we must be careful here. There is a difference between the ego's voice and the voice that is nudging you towards something that you have really wanted to address in this incarnation. And one of the things we want you to know is that your blocks and your resistances and your distortions will come up no matter what you do. No matter what you do, you will get triggered by those things in you that trigger you, your fears, your resentments, your prejudices, whatever it is. So we say to you, why not live a life that is inspired by a passion rather than allowing yourself to put up with career or life choices that you don't even really want, because your triggers are going to come up anyway. So why not intersperse your triggers with some joy and passion and excitement rather than mundane, boring, and horrible jobs? So we are playing with you a little bit here. But what is being special. Being special is setting yourself apart from others. And that really is a frequency that only you will know when you are exploring an idea like this. Why do I want to be a singer? Well, it's just innate in me. I love to sing. I love to hear the sounds. I love to please people. I love to be on stage. I just love everything about singing. Why do you want to be a singer? Well, it pays a lot of money and I really get to wear lots of nice clothes and I'll be treated really, really specially. You can see the difference. And so it's not hard for you to figure out whether you are chasing an idol or whether you are expressing a deeper spiritual quality that you have been gifted with. However, if the ego is in control and if the ego is very powerful, it can contaminate your gift. Many of those beings that you see dying early, there's that 27 group, all of these very, very famous, very, very talented beings who don't make it past 27, they had a natural skill, they had a natural ability, and they were very, very gifted. And so it was an innate quality in them, a spiritual quality, if you will. But their egos got involved and they began to take drugs and alcohol and they began to do things that were very detrimental to their mental and emotional and physical well-being. Those decisions, those short-term highs, if you will, those unthought through processes that led them down the wrong garden path, those would be the ego. What is the ego? The ego is the wanting part of you, the questioning part of you, the insecure part of you, the doubting part of you, the part of you that's fearful, the part of you that's confused. And so the ego can certainly contaminate what is a beautiful gift. So it is not black and white, as you say. It is a gray area. And only you who are experiencing it from the inside out will be able to discern, am I chasing after this to make myself feel better when I feel bad? Or am I pursuing something that is really seems to be part of me, seems to be always there, whether I'm married or single, living in different places, that theme always seems to be there. So with this being, for example, her art and her spiritual interests have always been with her. And that has never changed, whether she's living in a different country, married to a different person, a mother, childless, doesn't matter. Art and spirituality have been two of her great passions, and she came in with those. And yes, they could be and have been at times contaminated by ego. But since doing A Course in Miracles and clarifying the mind and figuring out what her ego uses things for, how it feels and how not to do that, she has come to a place where those passions live gently and quietly alongside her. And really, she is not seeking infamy or wealth from those things. They are just what she does. We will return shortly. Use me as an example. Okay, that's a good question. Next question, we'll give this one to Ananda. Is God's name important? In the Bible, God's name is JHWH, which we call Jehovah. Is that God's right name? I'm sorry, this makes me laugh. And Jesus said in his prayer, "Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Thanks." Okay. Is Yahweh God's, or Jehovah? Yahweh's another way of saying JH. Hang on, I haven't got my glasses on here. JHWH. Ananda can tell us. Oh, we're with you again, dear ones. God has many names, and no, it doesn't matter. God is not a being with an ego to take offense at you using the wrong name. Only a human being would do that. Other creatures do not care if you call them hey you or buddy or beautiful or pretty or whatever it is that you call a horse or a cat or a dog. Yes, they answer to the one that you call them all the time because they've often associated treats or pets with that name, but God does not care what you call him, her, all that is. It is not an individual with an ego. It does not matter what you call him, her, all that is to anyone other than you as human beings who have been taught that there is sin and that your God is a jealous God and will smite you if you upset him, her, all that is. So no, you may call God him, her, all that is, goddess, whatever you want, doesn't matter. But do be aware that you are humanizing an energy. You are humanizing a level of consciousness that pervades everything. It is not an individual. It does not respond to attack. It does not hold back love because you've been bad. It is constantly emitting light and love to everything and everybody all the time. And no, it is really unnameable. In the Bible, those cryptic use of letters was because, in a sense, the original transmitters of that information were saying that God has no name. To name God is to diminish God in a way and try and fit him, her, all that is into human value system, human scale. And so that is the answer to that question. We're getting short and sweet today. I just will let you know Delphi will be barking throughout the broadcast, and we're going to ignore it. We love Delphi. We let her be a dog. Question for the love streaming. What is the difference between a highly evolved being who chooses to be a bad guy and a lower frequency being which is a bad guy? Very good question. I would never think of these things. We'll ask Jesus. You are blessed beings indeed. I am that one that you know as Jesus. And this is indeed a very, very good question, because there is a belief in most of you that there really are good and bad guys. And it is duality playing out. These polarities, like masculine and feminine, like light and dark, like wet and dry, like hot and cold, the world of polarity in which you live must have the good guys and the bad guys. It is the nature of contrast, and contrast is in fact how you learn here. That's the system that you've set up to learn how to experience, whether or not you like something. You set it up so that there are extremes. Now, when you leave this plane, when you pass over into spirit, perhaps for the last time, perhaps as another intermediary step before another incarnation is realized, you will see that those in your life that you considered bad guys were put there to challenge you. They were put there to remind you at times of something you wanted to learn. They were put there so that you could practice forgiveness, so that you could use them as the stimulus to get you to suffer and therefore pay attention to how you are feeling. And they are not your enemies at all. In fact, many of you, when you pass over, will meet old friends who helped you by being the bad guy in your life. And so this is not something that you are really aware of when the forgetting, the amnesia that takes over you here is at play. You don't remember that because you must recall that to experience clearly, you can't really know what the game is about, so to speak. So if you have a troublesome family member and they drive you crazy and you hate them and whenever they talk, you get annoyed. If you knew that in another lifetime you had murdered them, and that they were given permission to play that role in your life as a sort of reflective experience. We won't say payback, but a sort of reflective experience. You were unloving to them in another experience, and now they're unloving to you. If you understood that, you would not be able to have that experience of forgiveness, which you may have assigned yourself in this incarnation. Now, dualistic ideas and non-dualistic ideas can get confusing for Course in Miracles students, because we are in A Course in Miracles setting a much higher standard than in dualistic teachings. We are asking you to rise above the battleground. But we are asking you to rise above the battleground without actually having evidence to justify it. We are asking you to do it on faith. We are asking you to do it so that you can have a different experience and see that the ideas and beliefs that you have in your mind currently are incorrect. If you give up those ideas and beliefs voluntarily and have a new experience, you realize that they are a choice. If, however, you had that secret revealed to you, you would not have the same learning experience, and so you would not integrate it in the same way. It is very much like being given a cheat sheet for an exam. If you go through an exam, study for it, and get a genuine answer, I passed the exam, you know that you have integrated the information. But if you go in with a cheat sheet and you get the 99%, looks very good on paper, but you didn't learn a darn thing. It's the same thing. So having insider information about the bad guys in your life and the good guys in your life does not serve you. You don't learn what you need to learn. You don't see and feel what you need to see and feel. So what's the answer? What's the difference between a really bad guy and a good guy that's playing a bad guy? Well, there are several permutations of that. The really bad guy is down in the battleground. He is fighting for his life, and he will kill you to get what he needs. And he does not know that there's an alternative. The highly evolved guy pretending to be a bad guy is somebody who may choose to come in and play the role of the devil's advocate. So some spiritual teachers will seem to be cruel. Some spiritual teachers will seem to be very, very challenging, and they will not mollycoddle their students because they are challenging their students to step up their game. And yet one of those students may say they're mean or they're a bad guy. So we hope that that solves that question for you. But truly, when you leave this place, you will remember it as a dream. You will think that it is a nightmare at times, but if you keep on this path, you will create a happy dream. You will begin to relax into being you. You will stop compromising you. You will begin to love you. You will begin to attract to you beautiful, loving relationships and abundant experiences. And you will realize that the bad guys are just beings who have stepped so far away from love that they don't know what they're missing. And you will be able to look at any kind of bad guy with compassion. And that does not mean that you have them over to your house for dinner necessarily, but perhaps you will just send them love instead of sending them judgment. We will return shortly. All right. Don't know if that answered the question or not. Okay. During the Palm Springs retreat, Carol channeled a message about aspects of ourselves that we created and projected out. Such aspects can appear to be in separate bodies here on Earth. It was recommended to us to call back such aspects of ourselves we projected out, for they need to come back for integration. Can Jesus and Ananda elaborate on this process, why we created these aspects and why we should call them back if we are already whole? How to call these aspects back? And will forgiveness bring them back? Thank you. That is a very good question. This confuses me a little bit too. Let's see what Ananda has to say about aspects. We're with you again, dear ones. We want to remind you that you are powerful creators. You are powerful creators who have forgotten that you're powerful creators. You are powerful creators who think you are little individual humans stuck in a body, when in actual fact, you are far, far, far more than that. You are multidimensional beings, and you are able to fragment yourselves because it is just another level of separation. You look at the individual bodies and the individual selves that you think are solid and immovable, and that you're this self and only this self. But this is one level of separation that you have come to understand. But there are other levels of separation which you have not really been taught about. Sometimes you will separate off an aspect of yourself within the same lifetime. And when we say you will separate off an aspect of yourself, we don't mean you, the Tina, or you, the Carol. We mean the higher self, the oversoul of these multiple, remember the 1,000-tentacled octopus? You have an oversoul that is connected to all of you. And sometimes aspects will come down at the same time in a way to support each other, in a way to experience two things at the same time. And those aspects can be for beneficent reasons, and some of those aspects can be for what you might consider detrimental reasons, in the sense that you fracture yourself to avoid something. So one of the ways that the mind can fracture itself to avoid something is in a traumatic situation. In traumatic situations, sometimes when you're a child, you may actually create another you to deal with the things that are happening to you. And you may not really recall what's happened to you because the other you has taken on that role. So sometimes this manifests specifically as a multiple personality disorder, what you call a disorder, but it's not a disorder at all. It's a very, very, very good coping mechanism, but that fracturing remains within the singular body of one being and comes through as different personalities. But there are examples of different aspects of you being created and going off on what you would consider a different timeline. So in a traumatic event, there can be, for example, a being that makes a different choice than the one that you seem to make. How do these relate to each other? Well, all of these beings, we will say, all of these aspects are collecting information. It's confusing to you because it seems that an aspect that is not in the same body as you cannot be an aspect of you. But that is not so. You are one aspect of the greater you that would be considered your oversoul. That is having many, many lifetimes of experience all at the same time. We understand that the idea of multiple lifetimes or multiple aspects is very, very confusing when all you have is this body and this set of sensory input devices to feel your way through your world. But as you expand your consciousnesses, you will be joining some of your other aspects. You will have what you think are past life recollections, for example. That is another aspect of you living out a seemingly different incarnation, but connected to you through the ethers, through the dimensions. So very much like, as we have said before, an adjacent page in the same book, completely separate in essence, but so close to you that it is connected, all telling a different page in the same story. Now, some of the channeling specialists in this group are very, very good at elucidating about aspects. This is something that our dear one finds quite uncomfortable, and so the information does not come as clearly through her. She has to have some more experience in that subject to be able to channel clearly about it. So we do refer you at this time to Kelsey, who has, in this particular aspect of herself, decided to specialize in that subject. We will return shortly. Oh, I get a failing grade. Definitely, I have blocks to that particular subject, and I have felt bad about that, but I guess Kelsey's got the goods on that one. Okay. I have the feeling since summer, we'll ask Jesus this question. I have the feeling since summer that a low frequency entity is disturbing me when I meditate and do my Course in Miracles lessons. And when I feel weak and a bit sick in my body, I would be very grateful for any advice. All I tried did not work. So we have kept the name of that person away. I said that I would address that question in general, but it's not personal. What is it? It's not medical advice or personal advice. We're just going to address the subject in general about being interfered with by seemingly low frequency entities. Excuse me, I've got an itchy nose. You are blessed beings indeed. I am that one that you know as Jesus. And it is important in this particular subject that you understand that frequency is everything. We have addressed this issue before, but we want to come back around to it for this particular person because it is a belief that you hold in your mind that is attracting what seems to be a negative feeling outside of yourself. It is actually coming from within you. It is an unresolved belief that you hold in your mind about darkness, the shadows, what you might call evil. When you are raised in a certain way, let's say in the Catholic Church or in a traditional religious environment, there are stories told and mythologies propagated about the unseen, the spirit world. And many of you do not realize that those mythologies and those stories still live in your minds. But as you go deeper and deeper into exploring the non-physical, they must surface for you to address them. So what we would suggest for this person is that you, first of all, look for any part of your life where you are superstitious, where you dabble in magic, where you are fearful. These are all frequencies that are going to potentially attract the belief. We will reword that. These are all potential things that will trigger in you fear. When you are meditating, you are actually activating a belief that is inducing fear, and you are calling that fear an entity. It feels like an entity because you are actually projecting it out of yourself. You're not recognizing it as part of yourself. This is no different than when you are projecting your life. You are projecting ideas out into the world so that you may see what's inside your consciousness. You are experiencing your consciousness flowing over you in the form of your life every day. And what you consider dark entities are no different. They are fearful aspects of your mind being personified, if you will, and manifested for you to deal with. So the first thing you want to do is you want to look at matching frequencies in your life. Where else am I fearful? Where else am I feeling overtaken by something? Where do I feel powerless? those beliefs are of that frequency, and so it is important for you to address those beliefs. Those beliefs are what are projecting that feeling of otherworldly negative entity out there. We want to reiterate here that whenever you have an experience of fear, whenever you have an experience of unwanted, it is something that you are unaware of in your own mind. It is something that's showing itself to you because you are denying it, repressing it, controlling it, oblivious of it. So in any instance like this, look for beliefs and ideas of that frequency, of a like frequency, and begin to work on those. And you will find that as you deal with those lower frequency ideas, miraculously, it's called A Course in Miracles for a reason, miraculously, anything that feels like fear attaching itself to you or coming close to you will dissolve away. You will no longer be compatible with that frequency. There's essentially something within you that is compatible with that frequency of not love. We will return shortly. Okay, I'm going to have a sip of tea here, guys. I do have a couple of questions here that the wording doesn't make sense to me. So I just copy and pasted it, but I'm not going to do those questions because it feels, I don't know, I can't understand it. That's me just not paying enough attention. Question for live streaming. Can Jesus or Ananda speak to overeating and binge eating? What drives people to do it, and what are good steps to take to stop? Very good question. Okay, let's see what Ananda has to say about overeating and binge eating. Oh, we're with you again, dear ones. Of course, this is epidemic in your North American society. It is predominantly trained into you in two ways. The two most powerful ways that you are indoctrinated into overeating is television and your parents. Many of you, when you were children, all through your childhoods, were indoctrinated into eating when you weren't hungry. Dinner time. And if you said, I'm not hungry, there would have been an argument of some kind. There would have been an upset mother. I've cooked this meal. I can't believe that you won't sit down and eat it with us, for example. Guilt laid upon you, punishment laid upon you. You're going to eat this. Your mum spent all day cooking this meal. Don't you be disrespectful. So you would slouch up to the table and you would force yourself to eat food that you didn't really want to eat. You are sitting in a high chair and there comes the spoon over and over and over again. And you've watched little babies do this. They spit the food out. And what do the parents do? We're laughing, but it is quite sad. They scrape the food that has been spat out of the little baby's mouth and try and stuff it in again. This is a very, very clear sign that you do not want what you're being asked to eat. Either it doesn't taste good to you or you're full. So we are going to go through a few more examples. Being rewarded with food when you're good. Being given an ice cream as a treat when you have got a good grade at school. Being given an ice cream or given pudding when you are upset. Being given a sweet treat to calm you. Being given a soother with honey or some sweet thing on the end of it to distract you, to stop you crying. Many of the trainings around food in your society are about emotion. And so parents, a lot of parents back in the day, it's happening perhaps not quite as much now, but it is still happening. Baby's crying, you've done 2 or 3 things to try and stop the baby crying and it won't work. So a little bit of honey on the soother and the baby is distracted by the sensory input of the sweetness. The brain really, 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 really loves sugar. You have all seen that. You want sugar in your coffee, sugar in your tea. You want dessert after dinner, even though you're not hungry. Sugar, sugar, sugar. The brain loves sugar. It is a stimulant. And so soothing your emotions with food was taught to most of you very, very early. And eating unconsciously is something that is considered a recreation. Have you noticed how you eat food when you're watching a movie? Our dear one laughs at this sometimes as she stuffs popcorn in her mouth. She will realize that all decorum goes out of the window when a movie's on, and you're allowed to eat things in a movie that you would never normally eat. Butter on the popcorn, bags of candy, chocolate bars. Who taught you to do this? Well, someone took you to a movie theater when you were young and said, what would you like to eat? And you saw not a nutritious thing in sight, not a basket of strawberries to be seen. And so you were taught these things. And of course, the indoctrination through commercials, all you have to do is sit down and watch commercial television. And the truth is, most of you were raised on commercial television. You watch a show and there is 35 minutes of television and quote unquote entertainment and 20 or 25 minutes of commercials every hour. Pizza Hut and Ben and Jerry's ice cream and all of these, McDonald's, all of these things going into your young minds. Eat, 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 eat. So how do you solve it? Well, the first thing you do is you realize what's been done to you. You realize that you have been trained to reward yourself with food. You've been trained to soothe yourself with food. You've been trained to distract yourself with food. You've been trained to socialize with food. You've been trained to show your love with food and to receive love with food. And we would suggest that you begin to design new plans for all of those activities. So rewarding yourself with something other than food, showing love with something other than food, receiving love with something other than food, socializing in new ways. Instead of saying, I'm going to meet you for lunch, say, let's go for a walk instead of meeting for lunch. You can have a nice old conversation and get some exercise at the same time. But to change these habits, you must first acknowledge that they are unhealthy. You first must look at the body that you are inhabiting and say, this body does nothing that I do not insist that it does. So if I am 30 pounds heavier than I feel is healthy, then I am responsible for that. I have chosen to do that. And we want you to take the accusation out of it. Not that you're bad because you chose it. You think, okay, well, if I don't want this 30 pounds on me and I have this 30 pounds on me, who's in charge here? There's a me in here that doesn't want the 30 pounds. And there's clearly a me that does want the 30 pounds. What do I get to not do because of this 30 pounds? Perhaps you don't get to have sex because you're overweight. Perhaps you don't get yourself to participate in social activities because you're overweight. Perhaps there are things that you do not want, that you are unconsciously denying through carrying that extra weight. Many people put on extra weight when they are unhappily married because they do not want to have sexual relationships with their partner. And that becomes the excuse they use. The unpleasant feelings they are feeling being unhappy in a relationship, perhaps judging their partner or being unloving or whatever is playing out in that relationship, those negative feelings are numbed by eating. And if the eating stopped, then those feelings would have to be felt and they would have to be looked at. So if you find yourself binging on food, you want to keep a diary. And this is something that sounds really boring and not very spiritual at all. But we want you to ask yourself, what did that day look like? If you are binging at night, are you watching television? Are you bored? Are you unhappy? Are you lonely? What happens just before you start binging? Is there a trigger? Is there anger? Is there rage? Is there sadness? Is there loneliness? You want to postpone the binge as long as you can so that you can see what's going on inside your feeling body, because you are feeding you're using the food's sensory stimulation abilities. So when you eat something, it tastes hot or sweet or crunchy. It gives the mind something to do. Not only the mind, it gives the body something to do. Wonderful flavors, wonderful textures, wonderful sounds. And then you get the rush of chemicals that the digesting food gives you. So if you decide that you're really unhappy with your life and you have a few moments of rumination on that and you think, oh, I don't know how to change my life. Oh, I'm going to eat that bag of chips in the cupboard. You will find that for the time that you are eating the bag of chips, you are not suffering. It is a very adaptive behavior to stimulate the body mind so that you do not reside in your unhappy consciousness. So really, it is about looking at what is wrong with your life and what you need to change. If you say, I just need to lose weight, we would say it is deeper than that. If you just wanted to lose weight, you would be able to cut back on your food and lose the weight. There would be no emotional aspect to it. It would be a simple case of physics. Fewer calories in, weight comes off. That's losing weight. But if you are binging and going against what you seem to want in your life, then there is an unconscious, that means out of your present mind's awareness, action going on, emotion going on, anger, fear, rage, loneliness, sadness. You are going to have to dig beneath the form of your overweight body or your binge eating and go into your feelings and get honest with yourself. Anything that is addictive, anything that is taking you over is something that is hiding a pain, hiding a suffering, hiding something that you want in your life that you have not got. It is a challenging subject because of all of the indoctrination that is layered year upon year in your psyche. A Course in Miracles will help you investigate the mind, but reflecting back on the day and the moments before the binge started will assist you. It is a choice. You are using your free will to numb. Rather than using your free will to excavate and understand and learn about yourself, you are using your free will to numb yourself. And that really is the crux of the matter. You must be more curious about what's going on in your consciousness than fearful. But as you know, as many of you know, there is a time when you are not brave enough to look at what's going on in your life and you keep doing what you're doing, even though it's not really making you happy. But there comes a point when spirit begins to speak more loudly, and eventually staying the same scares you more than the change, more than the investigation, more than the curiosity. Perhaps you have reached that time now. We will return shortly. Well, I certainly used to binge on food, and I had severe eating disorders from the time I was about 16 until I was maybe 23 or 24. And I would go between starving myself, not eating for about 4 to 6 weeks at a time, to binging. And it was very, very disordered eating. And it was the battleground on which my lack of self-love took place. I was attacking the body with food in a very, very conflicted way. and I never really got much relief. It did get better in my 20s, but it really was A Course in Miracles that has helped me with that. And so keep up with A Course in Miracles. It will tell over time. Okay, we'll do one more question. I was a bit confused by this question because I'm not sure that it's accurate, but I'll read it anyway. Renee. Often Jesus and Ananda tell us to work. Often Jesus and Ananda tell us they work on our bodies to upgrade them. Okay, I misread that sentence. So stop talking, Tina. To upgrade them, but somehow that doesn't make sense to me. The body doesn't do anything by itself. It is created by the mind. So if our bodies change, but our minds don't, then change will only be temporary because the mind cannot do the job yet, cannot sustain the changes that have been made. Or am I mistaken? Let's see what Ananda has to say about this. We're with you again, dear ones. When we have referred to us upgrading your bodies, it is when you have been doing your forgiveness practice. What we have actually said is that when you are actively involved in doing intense forgiveness practice, we are able to shift your bodies a little more quickly than if they were left to their own devices. So let us say you are working on forgiving your partner. You are choosing love more than you are choosing fear. You are extending yourself more. You are refusing to attack. You are doing many things. What happens when you choose to do those things with your mind? You are using your free will to choose a higher frequency action, thought, word, deed. The body is going to respond to those changes in your consciousness. But sometimes different parts of your body take a certain amount of time to shift in response to those mental shifts. What we can do when you have made a big mental shift, when you have done a big forgiveness practice, let us say, we can assist you to shift the cellular structure of the body more quickly than if we did not assist you. It doesn't mean that we are going against what you've done. We are actually speeding up what you have already done. It would take place over days or weeks. Let us say your nervous system. If you do some certain forgiveness work, there's going to be repercussions throughout your body. But some of the areas of your body grow and shift relatively slowly. Some are relatively quick. So skin, for example, is relatively quick. So that's not going to take long to get the shift manifesting there. But some other parts of your body are slower to change. And so we can assist in those changes a little more swiftly. But really, we are not doing anything extra. We are just moving up the timetable a little bit. So we are not changing your body without you changing your mind. We are only ever assisting in the cellular structure shift and change if you have done the work already. We are responding to your work. So that is perhaps a little omission in your memory, that we are doing it in advance of what you're doing. No, we are not. But we will address this idea of healing. Somebody asked the question a little further down the page, but we will conclude with this idea. If you work on someone and help heal them, is that change permanent, or will the sickness come back again? It will depend on the change of mind of the person who is being healed. If they truly do not want that thing anymore, then that healing that you assist them with by using your clarified energy, using your clarified mind, using your higher frequency, if they genuinely have had enough of what they are miscreating, then that change can be permanent. But if they are really getting something out of being sick, if they are nurturing that unconsciously, then that sickness may well come back because they actually want it. Now, many people will say, no, I don't want this arthritis, or I don't want this weak heart, or whatever it is. But when you look at their behavior, when you look at their thoughts, they're constantly in that lower frequency, and they're choosing that over and over and over again. And they may get sick of the sickness and go to someone to try and help them get rid of it, and that they may get a temporary healing. But if they don't really understand that the sickness is their creation, it's something that they've brought into manifestation for some reason. And not all sicknesses are negative. Sometimes you will have a sickness manifest in your life because you need to have the experience that it is going to give you. So it is important for anyone who has a sickness or a limitation or a liability in their body to really ask the question, what is this giving me as an experience? Is this teaching me something that I can't learn another way? Is this reflecting fear? Is this frequency manifested somewhere else in my life? Is this a common pattern for me? It is not, again, a black and white issue. There are beings who choose to come in with congenital defects or genetic issues because the experience that it is going to give them is what their pre-incarnational conference decided was the best for them this time around. So we come to the end of this somewhat briefer session, but we are very, very pleased that you joined us. We are happy that you are here always. And we once again want to remind you that the work you are doing is very, very important. Every time you forgive, every time you choose love instead of fear, you are sending repercussions around the planet. And we want you to know that there are big, big changes coming this year. You are going to see a light shone on many, many things, both externally in your governments and financial institutions and business dealings. And you are also going to have a light shone on your own shadows. This is a year of working with your shadows. Why? Because you can't take them with you into the ascension process. They must be shown to you. They must have a light shone on them so you can see them. And then you must bring them up and decide, do I want to keep this? So your shadow may be an eating disorder. Your shadow may be financial fear. Your shadow may be promiscuity. Your shadow may be an addiction. We want you to know that when you see your shadow, embrace it. Encourage it to show itself. Bring it up to the surface and say, so here you are, dear shadow. You have been dogging me my whole life, nipping at my heels. This is the year that we are going to work this thing out between you and me, dear shadow. So we ask all of you to be brave. We ask all of you to witness in the world the revealing of shadows with joy. Do not become hateful. Do not become judgmental, but see the shadows being revealed as a demonstration that the society is having a cleansing. It is going up in frequency, and the shadows, those hidden secrets, are no longer being allowed to be hidden. The same thing with you. So when your partner's shadow comes up, be compassionate. Have this conversation with them and say, let's work on your shadow together. Let's get it out into the light, shine a light on it, and love it into oblivion. Because it is time, dear ones, to reintegrate yourselves completely and get those dark, unseen, unwanted, low-frequency aspects out of your consciousness. We will speak to you again soon. I don't know what that hesitancy was about there. Okay, thank you everyone for joining me today. Thanks for your patience in allowing me to phone in sick, so to speak. As you know, in a couple of days, I'm taking off to Costa Rica for the retreat. And so live streaming will be 2 sessions at the end of March. I did post it in the Facebook page there. So I think it's the 24th and the 31st of March. So the next session we have will be then. And hopefully we can sort out all these emails. We are slowly nibbling away at the problem, and we seem to be getting some improvement, although there are still some outliers there. Thank you again for joining me, and I'll see some of you next week. Bye.